This is episode 93 of The Place of Sound, and I'm your host, Kateryna Kalynovska. For those of you who are listening to us for the first time, The Place of Sound is a show that explores the themes of space and place using sound and listening. This is done through a variety of audio media production formats, so you can expect to do a few different types of listening in a single show. Episodes consist of what we refer to as audio portraits or oral history-style interviews that explore topic of home, soundscape compositions which use everyday sounds to communicate the personal and social significance of a given place, and we typically end the episode with a short documentary-style piece that explores the place-based identity of the producer. The aim with these projects is to allow the producer to think about the places that made them who they are today. These are the types of projects you can expect to hear on The Place of Sound, and all of them are produced by students here at Carleton University. They're what gets produced in COMS 4501 Digital Media Production, which is a fourth-year workshop course in the Communication and Media Studies program. Okay, on to the project. In this episode, we'll hear an audio portrait, a soundscape composition, and an audio documentary. Three distinct pieces that each offer a reflection on identity, place, and what it means to belong. First up is a portrait by Abby Stewart. It's a moving conversation with her Oma Liz, who immigrated from Germany to Canada in 1950s. Through warm storytelling and vivid memories, we hear about the strength of chosen family, the hospitality that shaped their home, and the deep-rooted bonds that form across generations. Next, we'll join Ava Konopliff on a walk through her neighborhood in a soundscape that explores nostalgia and selfhood. It's a quiet meditation on growing up, remembering, and how sound can bring back everything we thought we'd left behind. And finally, we'll end in Dunrobin, with an audio documentary by Rosemarie Robillard. Through her interview with the retiree, she reveals the complex reality of rural living, from septic systems and spring floods to rising costs and community resilience. Let's begin with Abby's audio portrait. Abby, take it away.
Hello, my name is Abby Stewart. I'm a fourth-year Communication and Media Studies major at Carleton University. For this audio portrait, I had the pleasure of interviewing my Oma, Liz, and hearing about how she and her family, consisting of herself, her 3 brothers, and 3 sisters, and both of her parents, and how they immigrated to Canada from Germany in 1956. When discussing the ideas of home, she shared stories with me about how she and her family connected with people to build their own not-so-little family here after arriving in Canada.
As we got older, I think the siblings and I got closer again and moved closer. Several of us ended up in Ontario, so we could see each other fairly regularly. And we still really enjoy celebrating together as we age. The last row of birthdays have been the 80s. So it's been great, and my parents were amazing people that loved helping other people. And when we first came to Canada and lived on a farm, my second oldest brother would often go to the harbor in Montreal and greet single German immigrants that were coming to Canada with no place to go to. And we always had a house full of young German people that stayed with us until they found a job in the room or a house. So our family got bigger and smaller as we went through the process, and we're still in touch. I still get calls from people that lived with us for short periods of time. and say, I remember when your mom did this or your mom did that. And there were always lots of people. And everybody became family. Like my mom could feed 20. She'd started out making dinner for 6. And as people arrived, it would just grow. I don't know how she did it, but she would just, get some more vegetables. The soup needs to be a little bit thicker now. There's more people. And she always knew how to manage. No, lots of memories. Unfortunately, that was all before the time of computers or cell phones, and phone calls were extremely expensive. To my knowledge, my mother never spoke to her mother again because she couldn't afford the phone call. It wasn't always an easy life, but it was a happy life. But then everybody moved out and moved back, and, we were different times, we lived different places, but there were always some people that we knew there. And through the military, we'd meet people and then meet them again at another base. And that was sort of a secondary family. And family doesn't have to be birth families or whatever. You can make your family with any group of people that you want to be with or feel connected to. And they're all different, but it's worth it.
Abby Stewart's audio portrait offers a tender look at what it means to make a home in a new country. Through her own Melissa's voice, we hear about immigration, adaptability, and the quiet generosity that turns strangers into family. What struck me most was the fluidity of the household, how people came and went, but the feeling of belonging stayed constant. There is a warmth to this story, not just in the words, but in the pacing, the tone, the pauses, the kind of care you can't fake. In a world where connection can feel increasingly fragile, it's grounding to hear about a home that expanded to hold whoever needed it. From that collective sense of belonging, we shift into something more introspective. In our next piece, a soundscape that invites us to slow down and reflect on who we are and how we got there. Over to you, Ava.
Hi everyone, my name's Ava Konopliff. I'm currently a fourth-year student at Carleton University in Communication and Media Studies. In this soundscape composition, listen as I explore the collective feeling of nostalgia and the bittersweet emotions of growing up and moving on. I walk a familiar route around my neighborhood and reminisce on the lifetime of memories that have brought me to where I am today. By listening to everyday sounds such as a dog walking, children playing, and train horns, I reflect on their unsaid meanings of loss, aging, and familial bonds. I attempt to deconstruct the idea of self-identity by examining the mosaic of tiny moments that create a person. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy. I've always known nostalgia as an intense longing that creates a visceral ache in my gut whenever it surfaces. It serves as a bittersweet reminder of the mosaic of people and places that have formed who I am. Accompanied by my dog, I begin to walk the route around my block that holds 15 years worth of memories. I hear the rattle of the leash and our footsteps blend. I close my eyes and I'm now with my childhood dog who has passed away. I'm 14, it's fall, and we're walking down the same route with the same leash, neither of us knowing it'll be the last time. As I near my old elementary school, I hear the echoed voices of the children playing in the yard. I reminisce on the days that I was one of those kids.
I recall watching all the cars and people pass by on the nearby streets. I'm now the one who passes by, as I listen to the sounds of my childhood surround me.
Hey, I'm at 5. I'm at 6.
The school bell rings in a familiar chime, and all of a sudden I'm 8 years old, sighing with disappointment as I'm ushered back into the school with the other children at the end of recess. I head back to my house, and I hear the all too familiar sound of a train as it passes on the nearby tracks. A constant sound throughout my childhood. I'm immediately 17 again, and back in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, when everyone was isolated in their homes. My sister and I decide to go on a walk to the train tracks.
You know where we should go?
Where? The train tracks.
Yeah.
We talk and laugh as we walk along them for the first time in all the years we've lived there. Despite everything going on in the world, we find joy together, and at this moment, I'm perfectly content. Every time I walk this route, for better or for worse, I'm reminded of all the experiences I've had, the people I've known, and the seasons that have come and gone. Human identities are rooted in each amazing, horrible, chaotic, and mundane moment, and as we collect them, we're able to create more. I walk back up to my front door, and the lives I've lived echo around me in fragments. As a reminder that each moment brings you to where you are today, even if familiar sounds now live in new realities and the memories only exist in your head.
Eva Konopliff's piece feels like a long walk through a memory. The layering of everyday sounds, footsteps, school bells, train horns, captures not just a place but a passage through time. What I found moving was how the soundscape quietly builds a sense of identity through texture and rhythm, not explanation. It's not a linear story, it's a feeling. That ache of nostalgia, the blur between past and present, the way familiar sounds hold those who aren't there anymore. There is a subtle emotional intelligence in how the piece unfolds, like a photo album for the ears. Up next is our final piece, an audio documentary that takes us from city streets to quiet challenges of rural life, where retirement dreams meet environmental risks, rising costs, and the realities of aging infrastructure. Passing the mic to Rosemarie.
Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement, follows Julia Robillard, a retiree who left the city life behind for a quieter pace just outside Ottawa. But that quiet comes with spring floods, water issues, and rising costs. I'm Rosemarie Robillard, and in this audio documentary, I explore the hidden challenges of rural retirement and the support systems that don't always reach as far as they should. Just 50 minutes northwest of Ottawa's bustling downtown lies Dunrobin, a surreal rural community offering expansive landscapes and a tranquil lifestyle. For many retirees, it's an embodiment of the dream. But beneath this idyllic facade, challenges emerge that test the resilience of its residents. Welcome to Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement.
we retired, we sold our business, and we moved out of Stittsville. Stittsville was getting too big for us, and we were ready to have a slower pace. We had big life changes, and the country seemed like a really nice option. When we first came down, it was October. And when we came down the hill on it was Thomas Dolan Road. All the trees, all the maple trees were in full bloom, and it was a beautiful fall. Everything was reds and bright yellows, and it doesn't happen like that all the time. And driving down our road on Barlow, people were walking their dogs. Everyone was waving to us as we were coming down. It seemed almost like that I was meant to be. It was just really beautiful and serene. And at that part of my life, I just kind of gelled and thought I'd like this slow-paced life.
Julia and her partner were captivated by Dunrobin's charm. However, transitioning from city life to a rural setting brought unforeseen challenges.
We did move here in 2020, so we were in the throes of COVID. So there was all kinds of restrictions everywhere, but it did feel a little more comfortable here. We're in the country and we were able to walk the dog. We met our neighbors that way if they were out walking, but we didn't have any close kind of get to know you parties in the house. But then there was a lot of unexpected too, moving here. There's no general store. I mean, you don't have a Max Milk. You don't have multiple grocery stores. So, we had to learn to actually plan our meals, even though it was just, we were a smaller family now, but it was a lot that way. There was a little more organization to kind of get things that we were used to getting. Also, water. We're on a well here and we have a septic system. So even when we had to learn about different products to use, so we did become a little more environmentally cautious. The cleaning products we're using, we're trying to use a little more organic because it's going into our septic system, and that kind of leaches into our yard. So it's really important. So in Dunrobin, I mean, our house is old. It's from the 70s. So we had to put in a new septic system. So we had to dig up the yard, put in this. It's about the size of a pool. It's huge. And so we had to get everything set up. But there's a lot of these older houses that have an old system and they haven't upgraded them or maintained them. I have a friend who lives just down the road, and there was some serious flooding a couple years ago, and her well and septic system got kind of washed out or damaged, and she has E. coli in her water. So she has to keep getting it tested. Now she's got a new well dug, but she still has this bacteria in her water. It's so I mean, she has to boil her water or use bottled water. It's crazy, and this has been over a year after.
For many retirees on fixed incomes, a damaged septic system isn't just a hassle. It's unaffordable. Replacing one can cost up to $20,000. Some choose to risk it drinking water that may be contaminated. In rural communities like Dunrobin, public infrastructure just doesn't stretch far enough. Testing and repairs often fall on homeowners, even when flooding makes those systems fail more frequently.
In the springtime, when the snow melts and if it's a wet season, we're sandbagging, and the community is out trying to help pump out water that's in our driveways. I mean, we've had our whole basement flood. So there's a lot of these little things that you don't even think of, that when you live in the city. The country is a little bit different life.
Addressing such issues can be financially daunting. The Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program provides grants for septic system repairs or replacements, covering up to 50% of costs to a maximum of $2,000. However, with total expenses often coming to $20,000 and sometimes more, many retirees find themselves bearing significant out-of-pocket costs. In the meantime, residents lean heavily on community bonds.
It has a more chill environment. And although our neighborhood, we're all kind of in retirement mode, most people are retired. We do have some young families here, but the pace of life is a little slower. It's kind. So when we walk past our neighbors, we stop and talk. So there's this beautiful sense of community. And it's a sense of community that not everyone's in your business, but you're there. Like, I feel really comfortable if I'm by myself and there's a problem, I feel really comfortable walking over to the neighbors and knocking on the door.
Energy needs present another challenge. Dunrobin relies heavily on propane, a costly and less environmentally friendly option. Transitioning to electric alternatives is complicated by frequent power outages and the high costs associated with upgrading systems.
We're not on natural gas, so we have to use propane. So we have to use a dirty source of fuel. And of course, in today's climate, all we're hearing about is how horrible propane is. And I don't have a choice. I'd have to reset up the whole house for electric, which I guess we could do. But what happens out here is we lose power often. So, anyways, all of the houses on the street are geared up for propane. So we're using dirty gas, and it's extremely expensive. That wasn't a cost we were anticipating.
Despite Canada's climate goals, rural areas like Dunrobin are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Not because they want to be, but because the infrastructure for alternatives isn't there. And for older adults living on retirement income, rising propane prices aren't just inconvenient, they're unsustainable. Retirement should be about rest, not resilience. And yet, in communities like Dunrobin, the burden of infrastructure, safety, and survival often falls on individuals, not institutions. If we want rural living to be truly accessible, we need to ask not just what draws people here, but what keeps them safe, healthy, and supported once they arrive.
I think you look at it as a simple life, and you're coming here to just sink into this easy, carefree life. And the reality is it's not. And maybe that's no life. I mean, there's a duality in your mind. You have these values and you have these ideas of what's happening. But no, living out in the country has a lot of work.
Retirement in the countryside offers undeniable allure, but it's accompanied by the challenges that demand attention from both the community and municipal leaders. Thank you for joining us on Dunrobin Dreams, the reality of rural retirement.
Rosemarie Robillard's audio documentary made me think a lot about how we talk about retirement, and how often that story is missing the full picture. You hear Dunrobin and you imagine something calm, green, and peaceful, and it is, but only partly. What really struck me was how clearly this piece shows the gap between the dream and the day-to-day reality. Like, you don't really think about the septic tank until yours stop working. You don't realize how much you rely on clean water until the well's been contaminated. And for retirees, people who are supposed to be in this restful, stable chapter of life, these things aren't just annoying. They're expensive and they're exhausting. Julia, the woman we met in the piece, has such a grounded, generous way of explaining all this. You can hear that she loves where she lives. She's not bitter or regretful, but you can also hear the tension, the low-level stress that comes from constantly having to adapt, fix, budget, and plan ahead. It reminded me that rural life is often portrayed as the slower, easier alternative to city, but in many ways it demands more self-sufficiency, more money, more patience, and more community. And I appreciate that Rosemarie didn't over-narrate it. The story moves in a way that lets Julia's voice take the lead, which makes it feel honest and unfiltered. What stayed with me most was the idea that retirement isn't just about leaving work. It's about whether the systems around you are built to let you live well, with dignity and comfort. And for a lot of people, especially outside urban centers, the answer is not yet. Listening to all three of these projects, I kept coming back to this feeling that sound lets us notice things we would otherwise overlook. Like you could describe a childhood memory or a flooded basement or a shared meal, but hearing it, feeling it in your body through rhythm and noise and silence just hits differently. What I really love about these pieces is that they're not trying to be perfect, polished narratives. They feel lived in. They sound like real people reflecting on real moments, whether joyful or painful or somewhere in between. And that's what this show is all about, holding space for those kinds of stories. Stories that might not make the news or win awards, but that matter deeply to the people who lived them. So if you're listening and thinking, I have something to say, you absolutely do. Whether you're a student, a sound enthusiast, a total beginner, or someone who's just curious about audio, we'd love to hear your voice. You can submit your work through our Instagram, The Place of Sound, or head to our website, theplaceofsound.ca, and click the button Get Involved. Thanks for spending this time with us, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye now.